Hey guys, so for today's movie review, I'm going to talk about the film High Anxiety. And actually, I need to go grab that quick. It's right over here. So sorry about that. So High Anxiety, it's a film by Mel Brooks. It's a film that spoofs famous Alfred Hitchcock films, kind of like what you see on the front cover here. That's kind of spoofing Vertigo. It spoofs Psycho, North by Northwest, and a little bit of Rear Window, but not a lot. And it also spoofs The Birds. Let me adjust this here. So in High Anxiety, you guys, it basically centers around a psychologist who works for a psychiatric ward. He, has a lot of really needy patients. He, and more importantly, he does suffer from high anxiety, thus the title. Um, and there's a time in the film where he has to stay at this hotel where he gets framed for murder, kind of like what happened with Cary Grant in North by Northwest. Um, there's a time where he's fallen in love with this woman, and he has to try to figure out how things would work. Is there more to this woman than he thinks? So, and based on kind of the way she looked in the film, she was kind of like the female character from Vertigo, kind of like dressed up in that gray outfit with the blonde hair. Kind of reminded me of that character from Vertigo. Um, and basically, he has to get himself out of this murder and prove that he's innocent because there was this guy dressed up as him who committed the murder and has to prove his innocence. He has to catch the guy who did commit all of this, and he basically has to prove that he's innocent. Um, so this film spoofs Psycho. It spoofs, all the films I mentioned earlier. So basically, kind of like Spaceballs and Blazing Saddles, it's definitely more along the line of, it's trying to be more comedic and it's not too concerned with storyline, but it definitely does want to tell some good jokes and definitely take these things that we're familiar with from Alfred Hitchcock's films and turn them into something comedic, which Mel Brooks did a very good job with. For the positives and negatives, you guys, um, the Hitchcock film spoofs are very clever in this. I like the shower scene, how Mel Brooks kind of created that for his own film. He does recreate the shower scene from Psycho, does it in a very comedic way that it sets up very well and it makes sense as you watch it. It involves a newspaper, and how he sets that up is pretty good. Um, the distinct characteristics of certain characters in this was very good. For example, there's a character, he's kind of this bellhop who works for the Mel Brooks character throughout the film. He always claims, he can pick up the heavy luggage for someone, but he can never quite lift it. And it's kind of a reoccurring joke throughout the film. And after a while, it does kind of make this character more distinct. That he's kind of this character that really can't lift heavy luggage and that. He's not as strong as he thinks he is. And there's a lot of small things with these characters throughout the film that I think the film does a very good job with. The Cloris Leachman Nertz, let's see if I can say that right. The Cloris Leachman, the actress who plays the nurse in this, her characteristics are very distinct in this also. So that was very fun. The film looks and feels like an Alfred Hitchcock film, and I like that Mel Brooks was able to accomplish that. It definitely had kind of that older 1960s look to it, kind of the toned down colors to really make it look like an older film. And though this film was made in the 70s, at the time I'm sure this wasn't as hard simply because he filmed this basically almost 10 to 15 years after Alfred Hitchcock was making big films. Um, and I'm not 100% certain, but I think Alfred Hitchcock may have been alive by the time this film came out, but I'm not 100% certain. And I only say that because I think Family Plot came out in the 80s, so he might have been around when this came out. So who knows what he probably would have felt about it. Um, Mel Brooks has a very entertaining form of energy in here. You can definitely tell he has a lot of energy put into the role. He does this with a lot of his films, and you can definitely tell that energy with this film. So in that sense, High Anxiety becomes a more enjoyable experience because he brings so much energy to his part and to the film. And in a sense, he almost makes the film more entertaining because of this energy that he brings to the film. Um, Some of the negatives of this film, you guys, is I think it is a little bit too exclusive to Alfred Hitchcock fans. So it's definitely a film where if you've never seen any of Alfred Hitchcock's films, or if you're not a diehard fan of his films, this film may not be as fun just because, most of the humor comes from the fact that they're spoofing really important moments from Alfred Hitchcock's films, like the shower scene, like The Birds, like North by Northwest, like Vertigo. So if you don't know anything about those films or you're not really passionate about them, this film may not be as fun just because most of the jokes come from spoofing these big films. Um, the films that are not related to the Alfred Hitchcock films at all, it's definitely kind of the scenes that um, make this film stand on its own, kind of, the actual story of high anxiety. Let's see what I can. Yeah, so like the parts where there's like a scene with Mel Brooks singing, which later is the high anxiety theme song, and things like that that really, you can definitely tell they're not trying to spoof an Alfred Hitchcock film at that point in the scene or in those scenes in the film. Those non-Hitchcock scenes, they really aren't that fun. They're not as fun as the Hitchcock spoofing scenes are. So in that sense, High Anxiety isn't quite as good as like Young Frankenstein or Spaceballs or Blazing Saddles, simply because when it's not spoofing anything, it really doesn't go anywhere and it's not very good. Um, there is some stale humor in here. Um, like I said, specifically when it's not really trying to spoof anything. Um, so I don't know whether to say High Anxiety should have spoofed more Alfred Hitchcock films, if more humor should have come from that, um, or whether on the scenes that aren't Alfred Hitchcock spoofs, they could have possibly made those more fun. Um, and overall, this film isn't Mel Brooks' best film. It's definitely not Young Frankenstein. It's not Spaceballs. It's not Blazing Saddles. Heck, it's probably not even History of the World Part 1. Um, but it is a fun film. And like I said before, if you like Alfred Hitchcock, this film will be a lot of fun simply because you're probably going to pick up on a lot of the scenes that are meant to spoof Alfred Hitchcock's films. And it's done in a Mel Brooks style humor. So if you like Spaceballs and, the stuff that Mel Brooks has worked on before and after this film, this film should be a lot of fun. And overall, guys, I think the film's storyline is a bit sloppy. It does go from the psychiatric ward to a story about a man trying to, prove his innocence, to this man trying to win the heart of this girl, to this, to this, to this. And by the end of the movie, you don't really quite know what the film was trying to say. Is this just a giant comedic trope? Is this, um, this guy just suffering from high anxiety and he's stuck in all these situations and he has to get out of all of them. So by the end of the film, you really don't quite know what the film was about. But because this is a comedy, I'm sure Mel Brooks wasn't too concerned with it. But at the same time, that's probably where high anxiety gets, where it's not just is quite as good as some of Mel Brooks' other films. But overall, guys, I do give High Anxiety an 8 out of 10. It's a fun film. If you like Alfred Hitchcock, you'll definitely catch all the little references that they make to it throughout the film. But like I said before, though, it's just not quite Spaceballs and it's not quite Blazing Saddles and all that kind of stuff. But it's a fun film. If you like Mel Brooks, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely not a boring film. It just, like I said before, there's just a lot of scenes in here where either it's missed opportunity or the jokes aren't as fun as the spoofing of Alfred Hitchcock films. But if you like that kind of thing, if you're looking for a film where Mel Brooks basically does spoof Alfred Hitchcock, this film is quite fun, so make sure you check it out if you like that kind of thing.